Merry Christmas. Welcome to the Valve Bounds. This is our final episode for the year. We will be talking Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Lando Norris, championship winner.
Well done, Lando.
Well done, Lando Norris. Indeed. I'm joined by Damo, my key analyst and Formula One expert. How are you, mate?
Right. I'm off that lie. I am doing very well, thank you.
Not a lie.
It's the final round, all done and dusted. The championship has been decided, and it's been a long year, especially 24 odd races from there and all the supercar stuff. But didn't quite live up to expectations in Abu Dhabi. It wasn't a big thriller, but it had its moments, I guess.
Well, yeah. I don't know if it ever actually had a moment. Like, I suppose the moment was Oscar going around the outside of Lando, and then from there, another crappy strategy call by McLaren ends us the year.
Yeah, it wasn't their worst, if that's a positive.
No, it wasn't their worst. I think Qatar will go down as their worst for the year. And the other key decision of Monza would be another poor one. But
yes.
But we can talk about the championship a bit later on. Let's discuss the fact that Lando Norris is our champion. Yes. Congratulations, Lando. Thoroughly deserved. Compared to what I've seen online, what others are saying, I don't think it's not deserved. People need to calm our farm. How do you feel about it, Damo?
Yeah, mate. I think we have discussed in the past, but his run over the last sort of batch of Grand Prix, and even in that midsection of the race where he really did commit and pass cars with a bit more endeavor is probably the word I'd use, is that he actually did feel like he was deserving of it. He, really took it to Oscar, and even his remarks post race, where people were trying to focus on Max and what sort of pressure Max had applied to him over the year, and he just said, "Mate, don't forget about Oscar. He has been absolutely driving me to be my best," and so I think it's well deserved, and I'm glad that he's finally got it out of his system. He's got his world championship because I think that then should set us up for a very interesting 2026. But he really did drive a decent race to hang on to that third position, do what he needed to do.
Well, that was it. Do what you have to do. Don't fight too hard. I'm sure when Oscar started going around the outside, he got halfway through and went, actually, I don't need to fight this. And just let him go. I mean, we can let's touch on the Tsunoda pass. I've got a view on this, and this is not a dig at Lando at all, but that track is the widest track in the world, and he had to do it off the track. I know that Tsunoda was left, right, but ultimately he had the option of going to the outside and trying to make the move around the outside, and taking to off track. As much as Tsunoda probably deserved his penalty, I kind of feel like Lando probably should have copped a 5-second himself for making the overtake illegally.
Yeah, well, I'm with you, because I think if that had happened in what's another wide track, like maybe like in Bahrain earlier in the season, I'm tipping there would have been a gained advantage, passing outside of the lines.
Yeah.
He was just fortunate that the first sort of left and then right that Tsunoda did, I think were all fair, trying to break the slipstream a little bit. It was that final one where he pushed basically right towards the edge, and Lando had just this choice of, I have to be on the inside, where I sort of feel like he probably could have easily done it around the outside on where the grippy part is. and it was very clear he was off track. So there's no denying that. I guess they just take into account they felt like because Tsunoda squeezed a little bit, still had room to stay on the track. That was the part that was really confusing for me, that I thought maybe he might get a penalty.
Yeah.
It was probably half a car length, or car width, sorry, between him and Yuki. And so if he was really close to Yuki, he still would have been on the track and it still would have been okay. But yeah, look, it is what it is. I don't think they were ever going to give him that as a penalty in the final race where the championship's, to be decided. But yeah, it was definitely off track for me.
I think when you define squeeze, and they said that Tsunoda squeezed him, but for me personally, you have to be alongside to be squeezed. So I don't, there was no part of that McLaren alongside Yuki when he came across. So therefore, I think Lando made the choice. That's where my defining line comes from. When you look at, to reference supercars, when you look at the Feeney Wood incident, that was squeezing. There's a car there. There's only so far you can go before there's contact. So I think that's my defining line on that. And that's not to say, just before everyone comes at me, it's not that I'm saying that Lando shouldn't have won the championship and that he wouldn't have won the championship with that 5-second penalty. It's just that if I'm adjudicating that from a neutral positioning, that's a slam dunk penalty every day of the week. And the only reason it wasn't was because it was Yuki versus Norris.
Yep. And in the end, if he'd gotten a 5-second penalty, it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have changed anything because he was like 20 plus seconds ahead of Charles. So, yes, indeed. And I guess that while we're on these sort of topics, is that really the only other defining part was what you talked about with Norris, was that amazing overtake again of Piastri going around the outside. And when that happened at the start, I was thinking, oh my gosh, he's just basically given it up. And then that was my initial reaction. I'm like, oh, Oscar's on here. He's going to be firing up against Verstappen. Lando's given up. He's let it go. And then Leclerc was like pressuring Lando. And I just thought, oh, has he crumbled? Like, is he falling apart? And as soon as he started to get back into his rhythm, he was just like doing what he needed to do and just delivered on that third to seal the championship. So
if we move on to Piastri a little bit, you can clearly see that he stays with Verstappen throughout his stint. No problems at all on the hard tyre versus the medium that Verstappen was on. And you kind of sit there and go, well, all right, this is Oscar's to lose, really, because this is the primary strategy. And then they pit Verstappen. You should go, yeah, okay. And you know that Oscar's going to go longer, and you're like, yep, that's fine. But then they allow Verstappen to not only just make up the difference from that pit stop, but then to overtake before they even pit him. I don't understand this at all. So in my mind, again, when you get to a certain point, so let's say, okay, Max is pitted, he's going to be faster, he's got fresher tyres. Right? So he's coming along, he gets down to, let's call it 12 seconds. At that point, you pit. Why? Because when you come out, you're going to come out on a fresh set of tyres with enough offset, you're going to be within 11, 12 seconds of your competitor. Mm-hmm. When you wait for them to come all the way back to you and overtake you, you're not in what, 14? You're not making up 24 seconds. And Oscar did well to get it down to about 11 or 12. I don't understand this strategy call. I hope McLaren really work on this on the off season and they sack the Ferrari guys they've picked up. As a champion team, they need to really improve upon.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's the old adage of, depending on the circuit, you've either got to do it early enough that you can keep that gap and maintain that you can catch towards the end, or if you've got the right circuit, you stay out long enough that you get really fresh tires, but you can actually hold up that other driver, right? And you can't really do that at Abu Dhabi. It's just not the track for it. So you have to make that early call. I'm interested to think about when you saw at the formation lap, they uncover and that Norris and Oscar on different tires. What was your thoughts of Oscar being on the hard?
Oh, I thought it was good. I thought he'd lose out at the start. Initially, it was like, he might not get to where he needs to be at the beginning, but when he made the move around Lando, I was pretty confident after that.
Yeah.
And my initial thought was, all right, he's done what he needed to do. As long as he sticks with Max, then this should be in the bag. Just the same as Qatar, right? If the team makes the right calls, he wins, and he should have won the last two races. That's the sad part, right? We can go into what ifs all we like. We've discussed what ifs before. We just have to accept that this is what's happened, and it's unfortunate for us. He deserved to finish at least second in the championship, and the team didn't allow for it. And if he'd won in Qatar, I mean, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, well, it would have shaken up because the points would have been so much closer across the board that it would have changed things a little bit. But you're right. It is what it is. So I guess that saying it's both very real and very disappointing at the same time, that there's not much we could do about it. But I think McLaren have to take stock over the summer break and think about their strategy and actually applying, if they're going to continue with this lens of fairness, whatever Papaya rules, whatever they want to call it, that they need to make sure that they're still giving both drivers the right opportunity to either win the race or get the best outcome. Yeah.
Speaking of Papaya rules, what did you make about, because Sky's tried to quash this a little bit, and so has a few others in the media sort of area. It's like, Papaya rules was only said once and it's been stuck. There's no actual Papaya rules.
Well, I mean, I know it's been said more than once, but I guess it depends on who you're talking about, right? Are you talking about Zach Brown only said it once? Are you talking about Andrea Stella only said it once? Like, who only said it once? That's my question when they say, it was just brought up once and then everybody's been running with it. It's like, well, my first thought was, mate, Sky, you've run so many questions and theories about this Papaya rules. Yeah. You can't stand there and then suddenly go, it was all a big dust up that shouldn't have happened. I mean, it's evident that they kind of labeled their rules, because that's the team rules internally. Someone said it once, and then we've seen too many instances that should sit around the Papaya rules, right? That's basically why they're there. But they made so many decisions in and around it that people have to talk about it. They've got to say, well, hang on. Why are we switching positions after a bad pit stop? That wasn't what we agreed to. Why do we allow no penalty or swap back positions after someone gets pushed wide in Singapore? Like, there's all these things that happened that should sit within that team rules, Papaya rules, and that's why we kept talking about it. That's exactly why, because they weren't living up to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they set the precedent, so then everyone then holds them accountable to that. You guys at home hold them accountable to that, quite evidently on the socials, because it's always an interesting read.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, the Papaya rules thing needs a rethink, but ultimately, there's nothing we can do to change whatever's happened. It is just what it is, and the way that Oscar can overcome these rules is just demolish Norris. Come out next year, firing, ready to go, win your home Grand Prix, start on the front foot, and just run it through to the end, and then there'll be no possibility of them saying Papaya rules too, because you've commanded it.
Yeah. I think I think that's ultimately the best way to dispel it or to crush it is to do that. And then I think he'll need to, like, if we get to the position again of a Monza, it's going to be one of those things. I think that's where you're going to have to start breaking the rule. You're going to have to say, like I think if it's 12 months down the track and they say, oh, Lando got a bad pit stop, we're going to reverse the position. You just say, like, we didn't agree to that. That's not happening. He's got to have to be a little bit more selfish if he's going to secure a championship. And it's so unknown with the new gen cars coming out. We don't know where they're going to be are they still going to be at the top? I hope this isn't, his last opportunity, that McLaren are in the wilderness next year or something like that. That'll be disappointing. But yeah, I think he's going to have to be a little stronger on those things. And just make sure it's still looking after the team, but just, it's Oscar first.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be selfish in this game to a degree, and I think he's played the team role enough now that he should have about 650,000 points in the bank to start pulling back on some, because it's been a year of this, and I think he's definitely done more than his fair share over the course. Yep. So, yes, Oscar, if you're listening to this, which you're not, but if you are, we love you, mate. Come back next year fighting, and just do as Hamilton says. Don't give him any freebies. Just go and take it. So, speaking of Hamilton, mate, and Ferrari, what a disaster of a year they have had. Other than the China sprint race, I'm struggling to think of any positives from this relationship thus far, and I think that pretty much stems from his engineer. Is it time for a change?
Yeah, absolutely. Like especially post race, just listening back to all the radio communications. Adami's he's been a problem for other drivers in the past, where we've had this miscommunication and things aren't quite right. And I think, look, Hamilton did make the call. He did say, he wants to change the people around him. And I'm hoping that means that he goes back to Ferrari and just says, this bloke, change him. I want someone in, hire someone that's got the skills. They've got to break away from this insular, selfish focus on Ferrari first rather than the drivers, because they're not giving the car. And then, like, one thing Hamilton has done all year is he has raced very well. So even when he's been out in that first quali session, he's always managed to kind of get back to somewhere better in the field, like into the top 10. They've got to give him the car, and they've got to give him the right strategy, because when they do, he's able to kind of get up there. I guess I don't think Hamilton's past it, but he's going to have to make some changes in the team for him to have success at Ferrari.
Yeah, there's definitely going to, you have to make changes. This team now needs to stop just sacking the head honcho and start looking at the team as a whole, because the team as a whole is primarily, what makes them a great team. Yes, you need a good leader, but if you guys can't live up to expectation and get the job done, and you're not really, from an outsider's perspective, it doesn't look like they're willing to learn and adjust at all, and they just ignore their drivers, it's never going to result in anything. They haven't won a championship since 2007, which they primarily lucked into. And it's getting too, like, for Ferrari, this is too long. I remember the 90s when they hadn't won for a year, or not a year, for like 10 years. And the angst and everything around getting it, and that was when Juan Todd came in and brought everything with Michael Schumacher and everything else and built the team again. And this is that time, right? Like, this is Fred Vasseur needs to sit down and say, okay, Charles, what do you need? Lewis, what do you need? I know you two can deliver, right? Let's get the right people in here and let's go. And just go from there. I mean, I don't know if they can pry Bono out of Mercedes, but shit, they should be trying.
Yeah.
It's they just need at least one person, especially on Hamilton's side, where he trusts them, because right now I think the trust is broken.
Yeah, I agree. He just doesn't feel like he's got the backing of the team. Doesn't feel like the right people are there, and even Charles is struggling a little bit because he still has, especially the last few races. There's been questions about the strategy or the choices being made, and it's not a great place at the moment. And based on some early talks that Hamilton have said, he's not really looking forward to the new car either. So, where do you think? So, if he has another rubbish year, Ferrari and Hamilton have another rubbish year, what does Hamilton do?
I think he retires. He's not going to stick around if the regs don't suit him next year. And I think the current set of regulations that have just ended really have caused a lot of drivers problems.
Yeah.
They've been a really poor regulation set over the course of their run. They have fixed a couple of things, but ultimately destroyed many. And the drivers not really being able to feel the cars, and things like that. We don't want them just cruising around, looking after tires, things like that. We need them actually battling. So we need cars that are agile again, that can move around, that do move around. We see it all the time. The best series are always when the cars have a level of movement in them, and they're hard to control, but also provides good racing because people make mistakes.
Well, I guess we should also we should have a little bit of a positive chat about what a fantastic year Verstappen has had. We were talking about it. I know we weren't the only ones, but saying that this could be his greatest year, especially if he manages to secure the championship. But it was very interesting watching him in the post race stuff, talking about how he feels like this is probably his best year. Right? He really overcome so many challenges within the Red Bull car and the car itself to evidently just miss by 2 points. Sensational that he could just still win the last one, take himself to a really solid win ratio this year, despite the car being less than adequate.
Yeah, well summed up. If you look at his entire year for Verstappen as a brand, not just on the track in Formula One, but off the track of Formula One, he has almost become likable. And look, part of that is because McLaren has been able to assist with this, but ultimately, it's because he was the underdog, right? And because the car wasn't right at the start, and he fought for everything. And then when it looked like it was down and out, the switching of Horner with Meckies and some development work with the car brought it back to life. And you have to say that Antonelli cost him in the end, because if he doesn't run off accidentally in Qatar, then he probably becomes champion. Not to say that they wouldn't just swap Oscar and Lando, but he probably deserves it because he's had to put in the most amount of effort overall, and he had no right to be there, not any right to be there. So, look, kudos to him. He comes out of this year with me going from a person who didn't particularly like him, like his arrogance and things like that, to actually making, I find him relatable now. I think he's a half decent bloke, and he's shown everyone how good he is, no matter where the car sits.
Yeah, well said. You've had such a evolution in your Red Bull driver fandom this year. between Brock Feeney in supercars and Max Verstappen, you've changed, Steve.
Just in time for Red Bull to come to Ford. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I wondered where it was heading, and that might answer it. Yes, indeed. But yeah, sensational year, and like his off-track stuff has been, really, really sensational, as you said. Like even when Antonelli came up to him and sort of apologized, and he was like, "Mate, no stress. Like this stuff happens. It's no problems. Like it's not an issue." And you're right. Like there could have been so many what ifs. Did you see the press conference with the British media trying to tell him how that his collision with Russell in Barcelona was the reason he lost the championship?
Yeah, well, I think if you're going to pick one moment, that's a moment of his control. So you can make that argument. And I think it shows that the fact that he got annoyed with the journalist, that is a level of regret sitting in the back of his mind. It doesn't sit overly comfortably with him. So yes, I think it was fair. I don't think it was needed to be said or asked in any case.
I sort of feel like the question really should have been, do you feel like there were any moments this year that, had major impacts and you feel like might have cost you or you have regret? Like that's the question to ask.
Yeah.
You don't need to narrow it down to the point where and then obviously knew he'd pissed him off because the follow-up from Verstappen was, mate, and now you sit there with a little grin on your face. It was like, wow. Max really bit. He absolutely just chomped down on this.
Yeah, well, the journalist went fishing, and he got exactly the response that he probably wanted out of him. And that's why he was probably smiling. Not that we get to see him smiling, but Max pointed it out. So look at the end of the day, we all do things in certain moments of our lives, and that's just everyone, that you look back upon and go, oh, that could have changed the outcome of certain things. But once they're done, they're done. And there's no real point. I mean, it was famous Dick Johnson saying, the only thing you get from looking backwards is a crook neck. And I think that's, the way Max sort of views it as well.
Yeah. And he's shown like he's the way that he approaches things is so different, that they kept asking him that what's your, a few races out from the end of the year, what's your percentage chance of winning? And like all the other drivers, like, 10%, 60%. And like, he's just like, well, it's 50-50. I either win it or I don't. And it's just such a different mindset because like that is absolutely that binary Max Verstappen, right? Yep. I won it. Nope, I didn't. And he's got no regrets about anything that happened. Things that happen, they're in the past. So, yeah.
He's an emotional being, but when it comes to certain things, he's very black and white. So he'll come out of this feeling like he won, I think, because he knows that the McLaren car was at the beginning of the year miles ahead, and to stick close enough to challenge at the back end of the year when they stopped developing and Red Bull kept developing, that, he sits back and goes, well, yeah, that's a job well done.
Yeah, the comment that he made, which was just perfect, was, he got some early Christmas presents along the way, and that's why I was still in with the chance. And it's just, you can't really sum it up any better than that.
Yes. So in following that, and we talk about Max's resurgence, McLaren's bottling and handling overall. We have touched on this many occasions, but what do you think that McLaren should be looking at in 2026 to ensure that this doesn't happen again? What's sort of some of the rules maybe you think they should have in place?
Yeah, well, I hope that they essentially rerun those situations, those scenarios again, so that they can actually review them play by play and say, okay, what was the best outcome for us? Okay, so like Qatar, what we should have done was we should have pitted, and then we would have ended up with these results. And then look at, I guess, the layer behind that, where they'll need to have a management kind of meeting of what are the rules that prevented us from having that, or what are the things that were stopping us from making that decision in that moment, and then what do we need to clear off the deck so it doesn't happen again. I personally think that they need to have Papaya rules, right, which is you don't hit your teammate. So it's the same as the Merc rules and the Ferrari rules and every other team. You don't hit your teammate. You give yourself enough racing room. And then outside of that, you've got to let the drivers and the individual teams do their thing. Let them start on different tyres. Let them make the decision if they want to box or not, whoever's the lead car. These are just the basics that every team does, and it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. So how do we stay out of meddling with things? How do we make sure we don't make the same mistakes again? And what is the basic framework that we need to live by? That's it. Nothing more.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think if I was going to put in like a hard and fast point, is that the lead driver gets priority no matter what, or at least first option of refusal, no contact, like you said. Yep. And they're probably the only two. I mean, if I was Oscar, just quickly, I'd be asking for a new engineer, strategist engineer. That is not his main engineer. I think his main engineer is probably fine, but the strategy guys need to, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, because sometimes, like, if I could read into, when you hear some of the messages, radio messages, things like that happen, it does feel like Lando's camp have the edge, where they kind of have better read of the data set in front of them to make the calls. It just feels like Oscar's camp doesn't quite have that edge, and I think that's probably a good thing for Oscar to kind of review. As a team, you want to share the data, etc., but it always felt like Oscar's camp was kind of just like, oh, okay, well, let's roll with this, whereas Lando's were willing, like what was it, like in Hungary or whatever, where they played a different strategy and then ended up ahead, and then got asked to reverse, because they should never have allowed that to happen, basically, because the lead driver got shafted. So it does feel like the two camps are different in that sense, and you're right, they probably need to sharpen up a little bit on Oscar's side.
Yeah, for sure, need to sharpen up. All right, let's leave that there. Again, congratulations to Lando, because he is thoroughly deserving, and we don't want to play around that. He definitely deserved the championship. He did very well, especially in the back end of the year. So congratulations to him, and I'm sure Zach Brown is well and truly nutted himself everywhere. Now, moving on to the newsroom, Damon, because we've had a little bit of news with one of the big wigs,
one of the old stalwarts of the foregone bygone eras. Yes, Helmut Marko.
Dr. Helmut Marko is gone. He's been given the flick by Red Bull after a monumental fuck up where he went behind the team and hired. I can't remember the first name of the guys. Dunn. Is it Alex? Alex Dunn. Yep, Alex Dunn. He tried to give him a contract and didn't actually ask the board. And see you later, mate. You are gone, and unfortunately for Alex, so is he.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare for Dunn. But yeah, look, I guess he and Hornigate, they just did whatever they wanted in that team, and it did work under the old regime. But yeah, the new bosses are not playing that game anymore, and I guess they tried to make it look as nice as possible by saying Helmut's decided to hang up his boots and everything, and within like an hour or two or something like that, it all started coming out. And I think I sent you something. I was like, I'm waiting for the the big official news people, like the Race and Speed Cafe, to actually report it. And sure enough, he went behind their back. They weren't happy with the way they handled certain things previously, so it's kind of been momentum that's been building. And with a year left on his contract, Dr. Marko is goodbye.
Hello.
So I can't say that we won't. We will miss the content that boy brings, where he's making racist remarks or getting rid of drivers 2 races in and just keep shuffling them through and killing off people's careers. It's going to be a different Red Bull, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think this is the shake-up that Red Bull's needed for a little while. I think they've had a branding image for a long time, and now they have a clean out, and I think it's a really good opportunity for them to move forward in a more positive light. And they head into a new set of regulations next year that also their own powertrains next year from next year.
Via the Ford brand,
but their own powertrain. Yep. So it's going to be a few things to come in that team, and it's going to be tough. But I think branding wise, it's been a good move to get rid of some of the old fossils and move forward with the new ones. So, yes, see you later, Marko. Not going to miss you. As you said about Alex, it's a bit unfortunate, but at the end of the day, I'm sure he'll bounce back. He'll make it if he's good enough and has the money.
I think, yes. The money, yes.
The money. All right, so we've had 2026 begin already because teams were back testing at Abu Dhabi and tyre testing, so the new tyres, and some of them had the new aero elements, although obviously on the old car. So they were this new DRS style system where the front flaps actually drop down as well as the rear flap opening up. And that's going to be very interesting. The most prominent and most refined so far is the one that's on the Ferrari. Mercedes had these like lines running out of their nose, like they had an oxygen.
It looked a bit odd, didn't it?
It really did.
A bit odd. Yeah.
But yeah, they've been testing that to see how it goes, and obviously the wheels and the tyres are a bit of a talking point because Williams ran no covers. It was nice to see a set of rims for once. Yeah,
it changes the look and feel of the whole car. I was really surprised when I had a look at the photo. I was like, oh wow, it really does look different.
It does.
So yeah, it was interesting, but we'll see how the tyres go. I think we saw that the Aston Martin was the fastest, ended up being the fastest. So Jack Crawford, and then Paul Aaron in the last of the Kick Sauber cars before they become Audi. That was very interesting.
So does that mean that Kick Sauber, now Audi will be at the front next year then? Is that right?
You heard it here first. Fighting for the championship, they will be.
Oh, Jesus, that's a stretch. Yeah, look, it's hard to read into any of this because they are the old cars with adjustments essentially to get a read on how every system would work. But yeah, no doubt that this is going to be a very interesting year because there's a lot of moving parts in this, literally and figuratively. So we'll just see how it all comes about. But I'd be very on board with actually seeing rims and not just covers. And and just hopefully the cars are just a little bit better than what they have been. So
yeah, the one thing that I thought was very interesting was they were doing 123 point. Well, Jack Crawford did a 123.7.
Yep,
which does seem reasonably quick in comparison. I'm not even sure. I was just going to look up
a short track.
Are they? Oh, is that why?
Because I'm sure they're in the 140s for.
Well, no, I think the fastest at Abu Dhabi, I think, was 126 from Max. I think 20. If I've got that, I'm doing it on the fly a little bit. Just having a look at the fastest laps here. Race results. Yeah, Abu Dhabi 126. So
that's the completed time. Hang on.
Uh,
Let's go to the
oh,
qualifying. Oh, no, you're right. 122 is in qualifying.
122 in quali. So, sorry, yeah.
Wow.
One,
They are
so,
miles faster than they used to be. Abu Dhabi was always early 140s.
yeah, because they got rid of some of that section of the track, so it is a bit faster now.
Yeah. I keep forgetting about that. Yep. No,
so
that's
yeah,
right.
the times were very interesting. So yeah, just it's always indicative, but yeah, we'll keep track over the next few days. I'm sure on the things go.
I'm sure they'll be slower, and so they should be. It'll take a little bit of time for the teams to get around, but I'm just porpoising gone, flat bottom, and just I'm looking forward to seeing cars that are a little more agile, even though they'll be weighty. Like they should still be more mechanically gripped up. So for the slower stuff, which has been a bugbear for you and I since these cars came in, is they look really cumbersome and slow at the slow speed stuff. Great at high speed, but anywhere else they just looked horrid. Unnatural is what I'd say.
Yeah, that's it. And so fingers crossed that it does what it needs to do. I guess we'll wait for the real testing next year.
Yes.
Probably the only other big news that popped out was Mercedes have gone and got themselves a big sponsor.
PepsiCo!
Never short of a quid. Yeah,
No.
PepsiCo. So Gatorade is going to be their big venture on their cars next year. And yeah,
first time since their 7-Up Jordan back in 1991 that they're effectively back in. So good to see. That was a very cool car. But
sexy.
yeah, they're no longer sexy. It's a bit unfortunate. Hopefully the cars look sexier next year. We'll find out though. Damo's not convinced.
Nope.
Yeah, so PepsiCo coming back in, I think that's a big deal. I think it'll be nice to have that big drinks type company come back in. Obviously, we have Red Bull, but just that, like PepsiCo and Coke and stuff are really big names that we all know. So, so it should be good. I'm looking forward to what they come up with because they're talking about it being branded Gatorade a little bit, and that's could be different. Yeah. The last Gatorade car I remember is what was that driver in supercars back with the VT? He had the Gatorade Commodore, the VT.
Not Faulkner.
I'll insert it somewhere. It's not Umbrella. It's that guy. It's this one. Yeah. That was a cool looking car back in the day. And obviously, it's completely irrelevant of F1 for anyone watching that might be international. It's a homegrown series here, but I haven't seen any backing like that since those days. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Mercedes looks like next year.
That kind of wraps up for this year and for the F1 Championship. We are done and dusted. As we said, massive year. We thank everybody for all of your comments, likes, shares, whatever you've been doing. We really appreciate it. We will be back
in the new year for you. But yes, thank you for the year ahead. Thank you for all your comments. Thanks for just being good people and a great crowd. And we will see you in the new year for 2026, Damien.
Oh, I'm feeling old already. Have a great holiday period with Christmas and New Year's. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye.